Meanwhile, during the same period when Donald Trump was aggressively posting across social media platforms, repeatedly talking about turning Canada into the 51st state, and threatening 25% tariffs in a manner that resembled reckless economic disruption, Mark Carney quietly carried out what may stand as one of the most intelligent international strategic moves in recent years. And Trump did not see it coming at all. Let me walk you through exactly what happened. Not long ago, reports surfaced confirming that Canada successfully finalized a wide ranging trade agreement with the European Union. This agreement essentially creates a protective shield against economic pressure coming from the United States. The deal strengthens trade pathways between Canada and Europe, deepens cooperation on energy, and secures agreements on critical minerals, all while bypassing reliance on the United States entirely. The timing could not have been more precise. It came in the very same week that Trump was publicly threatening economic harm against America's closest ally and largest trading partner. Mark Carney, who had only recently stepped into office as prime minister, did not respond to Trump's warnings in a traditional way. He did not take a defensive stance. He did not plead or attempt to negotiate under pressure. Instead, he moved around Trump completely, choosing a path that avoided confrontation while achieving stronger results. What makes this situation even more striking is that Trump's own inner circle is reportedly now dealing with confusion and disorder as they begin to understand that Canada has already secured economic partnerships that make American tariffs far less effective. Canada no longer needs to directly confront Trump's tariff threats. Instead, it has positioned itself as a critical partner for Europe, effectively placing the United States on the outside. Let me explain step by step how Carney managed to outmaneuver Trump in such a way that analysts and experts will likely study this approach for many years. For months leading up to this moment, Trump had been intensely focused on Canada. His attention was constant. He referred to Canada as though it were already part of the United States. He issued repeated warnings about tariffs. He questioned Canada's independence openly. His entire strategy depended on one core assumption: that Canada relies far more on the United States than the United States relies on Canada. Based on that belief, he expected Canada would eventually give in, ask for relief, and accept whatever conditions he imposed, no matter how unfavorable. It reflected a typical pressure-based mindset. However, Trump failed to recognize a crucial factor. Mark Carney is not a typical political figure. Before entering politics, he served as the head of the Bank of Canada and later the Bank of England. He guided monetary systems through the global financial crisis of 2008. He maintained strong relationships with major economic leaders across the world. Trump believed he was dealing with someone he could pressure easily. In reality, he was dealing with someone who possesses a far deeper understanding of global economic systems. While Trump continued issuing threats and projecting strength publicly, Carney was quietly engaging with leaders in major European capitals such as Brussels, Berlin, and Paris. He held discussions with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. He worked closely with European energy officials who were urgently searching for reliable energy partners following disruptions linked to Russia. All of this activity was happening without drawing attention, and Trump appeared completely unaware. Now let us look at what Canada has secured through this agreement and why it disrupts Trump's strategy so significantly. The agreement places Canada in a central position as a primary North American energy supplier for Europe. This includes liquefied natural gas, renewable energy technologies, and critical minerals required for electric vehicle production and clean energy systems. Europe urgently needs these resources as it continues shifting away from dependence on Russian energy. Canada has stepped in to fill that gap through a structured framework that supports long-term supply agreements. In addition to energy, the agreement includes trade provisions that give Canada and European countries preferential conditions. These provisions specifically help protect trade from external tariff disruptions. This means that even if Trump were to impose tariffs on Canadian goods, mechanisms within the EU agreement would help offset those costs and keep trade flowing. Canada gains stability. Europe secures essential resources. The United States finds itself excluded from this arrangement. Trump intended to use tariffs as leverage. Carney effectively neutralized that leverage. The section of the agreement dealing with critical minerals is particularly important. Canada has vast reserves of lithium, cobalt, and rare earth elements, materials essential for modern technology. Trump had been aiming to secure access to these resources for American companies. Carney ensured that Europe would receive priority access instead. This means American tech companies may now have to compete for limited supply and potentially pay higher costs. Sources close to the situation indicate that Trump's advisory circle is now experiencing significant internal tension as they attempt to explain the full implications to him. There is a growing realization that his aggressive tariff threats may have accelerated Canada's decision to reduce dependence on the United States. There is a clear irony here. Trump's stated goal was to protect American interests, negotiate better deals, and demonstrate strength. Instead, his actions encouraged Canada to form alliances that reduce America's influence, limit access to key resources, and send a message globally that pressuring allies can lead to negative outcomes. European leaders appear satisfied with this development. They have been observing Trump's unpredictability and willingness to challenge allies. In contrast, Carney has presented Canada as stable, reliable, and strategic. Reports suggest that after the agreement became public, Trump attempted to contact Carney directly. However, Carney's office responded by stating that he was occupied with matters related to Canada's international commitments and would respond through official diplomatic channels. This response signaled a shift in how interactions would be handled. Carney understands something fundamental that Trump does not. Modern trade relationships are not just about numbers. They depend on trust, consistency, and long-term coordination. Trump approaches deals in a transactional way. Carney focuses on building dependable partnerships. Although Canada's economy is smaller compared to major global powers, Carney has leveraged its strengths, resources, reputation, and geographic position to create influence beyond its size. Europe gains reliable energy and resources. Canada gains diversification and protection from economic pressure. This agreement also increases Canada's attractiveness to other countries. Nations such as Japan and South Korea are likely to explore similar partnerships. Carney has not just secured a single agreement, he has created a model that others may follow. Looking more closely at energy, Canada holds one of the largest oil reserves globally, along with significant natural gas and hydroelectric capacity. Europe's need for stable energy supplies has grown significantly. Trump believed tariffs could pressure Canada into offering better deals to the United States. Instead, Canada secured long-term agreements with Europe at stable rates. Canadian energy companies now have guaranteed customers. European countries have reliable supply. American companies may face increased competition. There are already indications of new infrastructure projects being planned to support exports to Europe. This includes LNG facilities, which bring investment, jobs, and growth. Beyond energy, the agreement also includes collaboration in technology and innovation. Canada and the EU are working together on clean technology, artificial intelligence, and quantum computing. They are aligning standards and encouraging knowledge exchange. This effectively creates a transatlantic technology network that does not depend on the United States. For Canadians, this brings economic stability. Diversification reduces vulnerability to pressure from a single partner. Businesses gain access to larger markets. Workers benefit from more stable industries. If tariffs are imposed, Canada now has alternatives. This reflects proactive leadership. Instead of reacting to pressure, Carney built new opportunities. Trump, in contrast, relied on threats. Carney delivered outcomes. Globally, this sends a message. Countries are observing that alternatives to U.S. pressure exist. This affects America's international standing. Trump now faces limited options. Escalation could accelerate Canada's shift away. Retreat could weaken his position. Carney, meanwhile, is already exploring further partnerships, including with Asian economies. This situation highlights a broader shift in global power dynamics. Countries are increasingly forming networks that reduce dependence on any single power. Canada has demonstrated how strategic planning can create independence. Carney has avoided public celebration, choosing instead to maintain a balanced tone. This avoids provoking unnecessary escalation. This approach reinforces stability and credibility. Canada's position in the global economy is strengthening. Access to resources, technology partnerships, and diversified trade routes all contribute to long-term growth. The agreement also includes environmental cooperation. aligning Canada and Europe on sustainability efforts. Other nations are paying close attention. The model Canada has created may influence global trade patterns. Trump's approach has unintentionally encouraged this shift. Carney is preparing Canada for a future where global leadership is more distributed. This is not a short term move, it is long term strategy. In summary, Trump attempted to pressure Canada. Carney responded by building alliances that increased Canada's independence and influence. Trump sought leverage, he lost it. Carney created options. And this is only the beginning.